can go live, right, Kathy? Huh? So,
Yes, Robin, we could go live.
if we're live.
Is everyone in, Kathy?
Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Kathy, will you lead in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Never get tired of this one. Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
Yes.
we did not receive any public comments for tonight's meeting.
Okay. Hearing that, I'll hand it straight over to the Superintendent, Dr. G.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Board of Education, members of our community. We appreciate this opportunity to take another evening to focus on the good that is taking place in the district. First, beginning with identifying and really reinforcing our mission. As a unified community, the East Ramapo Central School District is committed to educating the whole child by providing a healthy, safe, supportive, engaging, and challenging learning environment. We will continue to focus and sustain our vision, where we will become proficient in all that we do. As we know, our 5-point plan reinforces the good work of maintaining healthy, challenged, safe, engaged, and supported students in an equitable learning environment. Focusing on our numbers this evening, we are looking explicitly at our transportation team. We're going to have Mr. Schwegler provide a brief update specific to our transportation department. Mr. Schwegler?
Thank you, Dr. Giammartino. Good evening, board, members of the community. Brief description of our transportation update as follows. First, relating to the non-public transportation request forms. As we know currently, the April 1st deadline was not extended. That has been confirmed via a phone call to State Ed by myself. As of today, the number that you see before you is slightly increased. We have 7,700 forms that we have currently verified and entered into our VersaTrans system for next school year, with many more forms received via the multiple outlets, which were the e-form, the email address, the Dropbox, and also dropped off by schools. So those are continuing to be processed. When each school is complete, we will be sending them a student list for their enrollment comparison. The public schools update. We have commenced the routing of our public schools for the 21-22 school year. The transportation will be provided using clean, safe standards and protocols as set forth by CDC and State Ed. And finally, the 21-22 transportation bids, they will be advertised this week and sent out for bid. I'm working with the business office to expedite that, and that will be forthcoming. And that is our update for this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schwegler. As we know, we continue to focus on making sure that both our public school students and non-public school students and partners have the highest quality services on a consistent basis. So thank you very much. Members of the board, Mr. President, members of the community, we're excited to share the 2021-2022 preliminary district budget that will be up for board adoption this evening. We're going to remind our friends and colleagues that the budget vote information, we continue to focus on identifying budget meetings, community meetings, with the next being Monday, April 19th, and the following session being Monday, May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. The virtual link is identified both in this text as well as on the district website. Please know you can also scan this code to obtain information on the budget presentation as well. I'd like to publicly thank Ms. Iwaha, Mr. Gandhi, and their teams for ensuring that this is a fluid and very transparent process. Our budget session last evening garnered 391 unique viewers with over 20 questions being asked. Answers are posted to the website. And I'd like to remind our friends, colleagues, that the budget vote date is Tuesday, May 11th. Thank you very much. I'm going to now defer to our interim school and district business official, Ms. Macias, and we are going to co-present the next few slides relative to our school budget. Ms. Macias.
Good evening, board, community members, and colleagues. Tonight we will be giving you a presentation of the preliminary 2021-22 district budget. Prior to getting into those items, we'd like to give you a status of the current state of affairs for the district. This year, we were posed with several fiscal challenges. The first being a revenue shortfall in the amount of just over 31 million. It was primarily related to state aid in the areas of the pandemic adjustment related to the CARES Act, some service-driven aid in transportation and high-cost excess cost aid, along with some building aid. We also face fiscal challenges in the area of expenditures, where we overexpended the budget in the amount of 8.8 million in areas related to transportation, legal, and COVID-related supplies, as well as custodial, overtime, and Chromebooks for our students. We're addressing the fiscal challenges of the current year by going out for several borrowing instruments totaling over 36 million. The borrowing instruments include a revenue anticipation note, budget note, and deficit note. This leads us to the 21-22 strategic budget.
Ima, I'm here. Ima.
Some topics that we will cover this evening will be COVID-related funding sources, budget highlights, proposed expenditures and revenues, and we will wrap this up with the proposed 21-22 budget. We have several one-time COVID-related funding sources that we will discuss further and in more detail as we go on with the budget presentation. The first being the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, the Coronavirus Aid and Relief and Economic Security Act, and the COVID Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act.
We're excited to present that the budget highlights, first and foremost, identifies and outlines that there will be no reductions in programs or services across the district. We are also focusing on increasing the ability to provide very focused social emotional supports to our students by adding 7 social workers. The district is maintaining all levels of music, the arts, athletics, and extracurricular programming across the system. We're also broadening English language learner and students with disabilities programming, services, and professional learning opportunities for personnel. We're streamlining ESL and SWD personnel and programming to provide direct instructional supports in a very targeted manner across the system and within our feeder patterns. We're reducing the number of school-to-school grade level transitions that are going to be a result of the above 2 bullets. And we're also excited to note that we are focusing on a 0% increase in the tax levy.
This leads us to the expenditure side of the proposed budget. You'll see salaries and benefits have increased in accordance to our contractual obligations. Materials and equipment remained relatively flat, with the exception of some equipment that's related to mandated services through BOCES. Our contractual line increased by approximately $200,000. We have a reduction in legal expenses in the amount of approximately $700,000. And we have an increase in transportation expenses in the amount of over $11 million, which of course merits a discussion and explanation as to why. We've identified this increase is necessary based on 3 drivers. The first being a historical underfunding of the transportation codes, a $4 million savings that was never realized, and an increase in enrollment for the district that has been occurring year after year, but not budgeted for. We also have CARES expenditures in the amount of 15.8, which is directly mandated based on the guidelines. We have voter approved debt payments in the amount of 4.8 million, and a one-time debt payment reborrowing to address the fiscal challenges of the current year in the amount of 21.5 million. We have a legal settlement in the amount of 5.4, and we have approximately 34.5 million of which will be covered, expenses to be covered by the special aid fund, bringing our total expenditures to $272,449,633, a difference of $26,704,780, or 11% of the prior year's expenditures. So to highlight and recap, we have several one-time expenditures in the 21-22 budget. The first one being the 15.8 of CARES funding that must go out. Of course, this is contingent on our approval through the State Ed Department. We have the legal settlement in the amount of 5.4 million. And we have the repayment of the borrowing instruments, 21.5 of which will come from the general fund, and all remaining debt repayments will be paid through federal funding. The following is a breakdown of the expense components by percentage. Next slide, please. And which leads us to the revenue side of the budget. Our main source of revenue is the tax levy. It accounts for over 50% of our revenue. Based on the New York State Controller's calculation, complex 8-step calculation, the district can opt to increase the levy by up to 4.1 million. This budget for the 21-22 school year includes a 0% levy. So we are essentially remaining flat at as indicated. And of course, this represents 53% of the revenue. As you can see, the tax levy has remained flat from the current year to the next. We have an increase in state aid in the amount of over 5.2 million. We have reduced and or increased the following areas based on historical trend data. We have health services remaining flat at 475,000. We've increased the non-resident tuition, foster and OPWDD tuition line by approximately 180,000. And the chapter and staff tuition remained flat at 1.9 million. We've also identified several increases and decreases, again, based on trend data in the areas of the BOCES refund, workers' comp, Medicaid, we increased slightly. The use of facilities has decreased, of course, to account for COVID-related measures. And miscellaneous revenue decreased slightly, of course, all based on historical trend data. The interfund transfers line remained flat, and we are opting not to utilize any fund balance or appropriated reserves in the 21-22 budget. We have revenue reflected here in the amount of $22.2 million in CARES funding, which we are set to receive upon approval of our applications to the state. This brings our total projected revenue to $272,449,633 for a difference of $26,704,780 or 11% of an increase compared to the prior year. So some revenue highlights. The foundation aid has increased based on a new formula implemented by the governor. He has instituted a phase-in increase over the next 3 years, which should bring the district whole to what they should typically be receiving year after year. The foundation aid also includes an enrollment-based calculation, which for our district and our historical trend data on how we are increasing enrollment year after year will reflect increased foundation aid for years to come. And the foundation aid also adjusts for prior year shortages. We also have several one-time infusions of funding, just over 22 million in CARES funding, over 66 million in the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, and over 150 million in the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Any excess funds that we identify that will go unspent will be recommended to be placed in reserves. The following represents the revenue components in percentage form, which leads us to the proposed balance of 272 for revenue, as well as the same amount for expenses, which brings us to the balanced budget. So the contingency budget. Under contingency budget, the levy must be the same or less than the prior year's levy. For the East Ramapo School District, since we're proposing a 0% tax levy, the tax revenue really would not be impacted by a contingency budget. So as I indicated earlier, we have several influxes of one-time revenues and expenditures, but what would the district look like? What would the budget look like if we didn't have all of these one-time revenues and expenditures? We conducted an analysis and we identified that if we reduce the one-time revenues and expenditures, we would see an estimated surplus of $4.4 million. The following is information related to voter information and the budget vote date, of which will be also posted on our website.
Thank you very much, Ms. Macias. We appreciate you walking us through what is probably one of the best developed budgets I've seen in a long time that is setting the district up in a very well-focused manner for long-term sustainability and viability, not only for our students, but for our teachers, support staff, administrators, and community in general. Thank you. Mr. President, members of the Board of Education and Community, we're going to continue and close out with our teaching, learning, curriculum, instruction component of the superintendent's presentation. Ms. Iwaha is going to step in, talk a little bit about our elementary and secondary school cohort options.
Thank you, Dr. Giammartino. So we wanted to share with the public that there is opportunity as we explore increased in-person instruction. There is opportunity for our cohorts A and B only to have 5 days a week of in-person instruction. What we are going to share beginning tomorrow is a parent survey that's titled Parent Survey, Increasing In-Person Learning for Cohorts A and B. So it's for our current cohort A and B students who have indicated from the January second semester that they were interested in hybrid learning and have been participating in hybrid learning. So this is not for the families that opted for remote only. So parents should complete the survey only for cohort A and B students to share preferences for either in-person 5 days a week or remote only 5 days a week. The survey will close on Friday and the forms will be sent through Remind.
Ask a question, please. Ask a question, please. Do we have something built into, we know all the children who are families we're sending these out to. Are we going to be actively trying to seek responses from parents who have not responded one way or the other?
So can you repeat, we're going to actively
Try to contact parents, families who have not responded one way or the other.
Dr. G, may I respond?
Of course, please.
Okay, so yes, these surveys right now, students are either in person through hybrid or remote only. So they have access, either way they have access to the classroom teacher. So this message is being sent through Remind. So we are going to, follow up with our families through the best contact point, which is our teachers, but that's going to be communicated at the building level to encourage those in the classrooms to communicate to their students. But in terms of the survey going out, we will be sending it from the district's Remind messaging system. So we're going to do our best, as always, to, actively encourage individuals to participate in the survey.
Thank you, Ms. Iwaha. And Mr. Berkovitz, to your point, the district is intent on providing our students and families an assurance that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we're communicating across multiple modalities, inclusive of telephone calls, Remind, robocalls, direct points of contact through email, text messaging, and in some cases, as is necessary, direct home visits as well, sir.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Members of the community, members of the board, we're very excited that we were able to confirm just this week, based on obviously COVID-related guidelines and criteria associated with providing an assurance of safe, clean practices, that our secondary and middle school programs will in fact be able to follow the state and governor's guidelines associated with commencement exercises. I'm pleased to have Dr. West, one of our primary persons in charge of commencement, to walk us through this slide. Dr. West?
Thank you, Dr. Giammartino. Good evening, board. Good evening, colleagues. Once we were notified by Rockland Community College that we could no longer utilize the field house for our graduation ceremony or our promotional exercises because it is now one of New York State's vaccination center, we sought out to find other venues. At the time, we were using the guidelines from the CDC as well as the New York State Department of Health, and we realized that would not work, and we were approached by the town of Ramapo, which we thank very much, who has graciously allowed us to use the Palisades Credit Union Park, which is affectionately known as the Boulder Stadium, for both of our ceremonies. The high school commencement exercises will take place first, It will be on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Spring Valley High School will be at 4. Ramapo High School will be at 7. Each graduate will be given 4 tickets, and there will be a live streaming link for those family members who would like to join, but they exceed the number of tickets each graduate is going to be given. Our middle school moving up and promotional exercises will take place the following day on Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. Caciat Middle School will be at 1 o'clock. Pomona Middle School will be at 2:30, with Chestnut Ridge Middle School being at 4. Again, each graduate, each 8th grader, rising 9th grader will be given 4 tickets per to attend to attend the ceremony with their families, and anyone else will be given a link to watch the ceremony virtually. Additionally, we know that this is quite a bit of a change, but due to the pandemic and the limitations, this was the only way that we could hold one graduation ceremony per school. If not, we were going to have to hold numerous ceremonies at the same time. So we are so grateful to the town of Ramapo for making this available to East Ramapo Central School District students. Dr. G, back to you.
Dr. West, thanks so much for not only that outline and description. Thank you for the outreach to our town colleagues, and we have to reinforce that in order to get back to what is hoped and expected to be a sense of normalcy for our students, our parents, our overall community, being afforded this opportunity to utilize this space during these times is really just a tremendous opportunity for us and for our students and for our school district community. So we're appreciative. We know that Boulder Stadium is being utilized by many districts from Rockland County. So the collegiality, the problem solving on behalf of our students is appreciated. We're going to look at our expanded school year options. We're going to have Ms. Iwaha walk us through very briefly, knowing that the pandemic has really provided what I'll refer to as an unplanned hindrance on the not only pro-social development, but cognitive and other developmental aspects of our students. We are hyper-focused on expanding the school year to the extent that the executive cabinet team is in direct collaboration with our building-based leadership from our principals, assistant principals, teacher leaders, and academic standards facilitators. And Ms. Iwaha is just going to walk us ever so briefly through the developing options.
I believe you said it all, Dr. G. But just to add, with all the challenges that have happened, it's been such a pleasure, and it's uplifting to see the engagement of our building administrators in terms of identifying specifically our academic standards facilitators and identifying what the needs are of our students and how we can bridge that gap during the summer beginning July. And we're looking at our elementary schools and our secondary schools. And with our elementary schools, we want to make sure we hone in on ELA, literacy, math, numeracy, and also trying to work towards that engagement so that attendance as we go into the new year just is maintained and rises. So there's programs that are proposals that are coming in around bilingual, addressing our ESL, our SWD, fine and performing arts. And then on the secondary level, really looking at that graduation, so that graduation, that's what I'll call it. But looking at credit recovery, credit attainment, and just the summer bridge as students transition to the secondary school experience. So ever so briefly, thank you, Dr. G.
Thank you, Ms. Iwaha. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Dr. Giammartino. Sabrina, I have a question. Is this in addition to the Summer Academy?
So what the district has really been assessing based on student-specific data, we're using the STAR assessments and performance-based, performance-specific data. We're really not looking at summer school per se, Madam Vice President. Oftentimes what ends up happening with summer school tends to become increasingly this supplemental kind of quasi option. For those of you who are educators on the team, Mr. Berkovitz, I know has taught for many years as well. You know, the one thing that the team in collaboration with our building leads has really focused on expanding the school year. So continuing to afford students an opportunity to really continue their education essentially as day 186, if you will. Oftentimes with summer programming, there are these starts and stops, of which, especially for this year, Madam Vice President, the district really wanted to expand the school year as opposed to just looking at summer programming options. So this is really an expanded school year option.
Okay, so will the summer programs we've had in the past somehow be incorporated in this expanded school year?
So the expanded school year is going to take a different twist. The options will remain, but under a different umbrella.
Okay, and will it be all the options from the past or certain options, or has that not been discussed yet?
That is in the process of being discussed. We're also really looking at levels and degrees of efficacy of specific past programs. Obviously, we want to provide our community an assurance that attendance rates, average daily attendance rates during past programs were at a high enough level for long-term sustainability. So consideration, hear us clearly, consideration is being given.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Will all of the students be part of the expanded school year, or is it targeted only to those that you believe will benefit from it the most? And if so, what number are we looking at?
Thank you, Mr. Grossman. I couldn't have planted that seed or that question any better. The team and the system are really looking at the expanded school year option and affording such opportunity for as many students as possible, with the intent of really not having a cap if the possibility presents itself.
I'm sorry, one more. And transportation will be included?
The intent is to plan transportation very efficiently and effectively, obviously maximizing safe, clean standards, but doing so in a way that will allow our students an opportunity, again, to continue to expand their learning.
Okay, and I'm assuming that would also include the breakfast and lunch that we have going on now, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Does this mean that we're not planning to rent out any of the buildings this summer?
That is not the case, Mr. Grossman. The intent was to make sure that the internal team had a plan, so we didn't begin to make promises to our colleagues and our neighbors. We're almost to the point, and I know you've been involved in or copied into some of the emails. We're almost to the point where we can begin to release some of the lease information to our colleagues, but we didn't want to make promises and then retract them. So we're in much better shape this week as compared to last week.
Dr. Giammartino, this is Sherry McGill. Just a quick question.
Yes, one of our other educators we appreciate.
Yeah, just in terms of the expanded school year, I know that, of course, we're going to have teachers. Has that been the teachers' salary, not even a salary, but stipend? Has that been included within? Is that feasible with the budget that we're working with now?
So what the team is doing is actually framing the costs and disaggregating the costs, inclusive of transportation, inclusive of looking at stipends for instructional personnel, leadership personnel. We really want to make sure that we have everything in order. This is really planting that seed for parents and students and others to begin to think about how they can be engaged in an expanded school year. So to answer your question, Ms. McGill, we are taking that into consideration and accounting for such.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the
Mr. Grossman?
Yes. Is this already budgeted for in the budget that was presented, or will we be dipping into the federal funds and the special aid fund in order to finance this?
Yes. So to answer your question, depending on, I knew you'd appreciate that answer. Depending on the flow of funds and when funds are released, it's expected, quite frankly, to be a combination of ability to draw from across funds.
And what would be the hours for the extended school year?
Those are being finalized probably this week.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. G.
Yes, Dr. Will.
I just wanted to say, in looking at, trends throughout not only New York State and elsewhere, the extended school option from an educational point of view is actually a better way to go because it provides that continuum, particularly since, we're phasing in with school. I think it's a really, research-wise, it's the best thing to do. And to address Mr. Grossman's point too. I know that we've talked about this. Not only will we have support we'll have the full continuum, remediation and also enrichment, because you also want to make sure we don't want to hold kids back that may need more or can go further. So we want to make sure that those programs throughout the year are addressing that full continuum of needs for all children.
Dr. Lowe, thanks for pointing that out as well, because we have been very deliberate in focusing on providing our students and families an assurance that we will focus and provide support to the most at risk, and obviously our most gifted students, if you will, really looking at that continuum in a very comprehensive way. Thanks for reinforcing that. We're excited to have the world famous Mike Smith walk us through the Fine and Performing Arts update. Mr. Smith?
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Giammartino, and good evening, board members. So back in December, our award-winning Spring Valley High School's original virtual drama production of How Do We Feel Right Now became Amazon's #1 release in dramas and plays by women, who wrote it, with Stacey Tiro, who was the director, and garnered over 1,400 views. As we transition into our spring musical season, we present the ever-popular Disney classic High School Musical Junior. As you can see over here, the dates are Thursday, April 22nd, Friday, April 23rd, 24th, and there's 2 shows. And down here, we have a link that you can click on to find out information and how to be part of that. Spring Valley's Thespian Troupe 721 students take it to another level this spring as they sing and dance their hearts out to the hits you all know and love. Come and support our student artists and witness our virtually creative musical Showstopper right in the comfort of your own homes. We're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and that's rather apropos in light of the current state of affairs. We are all in this together. I won't be singing it to save anyone's ears, but we are excited for especially another performance of Thespian Troupe 721. Ms. Iwaha is going to just walk us through very briefly our family university that is pending. And again, I need to reinforce with our community and thank our community that this district gets a tremendous, comparatively high parent and family turnout relative to Family University. Some of the highest turnouts in any district that I've engaged in. Ms. Iwaha?
Thank you, Dr. Giammartino. So we're under the facilitation, under the guidance of Sonia Dominguez. She's really facilitated this next series of Family University sessions. As you can see, the next 2 Family University sessions, one is April 21st, and then the following week, April 28th. As you remember, our goal was to have these be monthly, but as we move towards the end of the year, there's been so much outpouring of support from our faculty and staff around supporting students and areas that they have identified as needs to support students and families, that we've increased the amount and the sessions. So you'll see April 21st, our academic standards facilitator, Ms. Samantha Shearer, the topic she'll be presenting on is supporting your child, test taking tips, where parents can learn strategies that help their children during testing. And then the following week, April 28th at 6 p.m. as well, Ms. Susan Goodman, who previously presented, is going to present again with the topic of learning how to manage your emotions and just being aware of your emotions. She'll add on to and expand on what she did prior. There was a lot of questions from parents that were able to be addressed and resources provided. So we really encourage parents to come out, join, participate through our Q&A portions. We try to make it as engaging as possible. So we welcome everyone to come out April 21st, 6 p.m., April 28th at 6 p.m. Dr. Giammartino.
Thank you, Ms. Iwaha. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening. We do appreciate the opportunity, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Dr. G.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, your whole team, for presenting a very clear and articulate budget presentation. I personally appreciate it, and I believe I speak for everyone by saying thank you, and a lot of hard work, a lot of time went into it. Much appreciated.
We do appreciate the guidance and reflective feedback.
Moving along to where are we moving along here?
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, just lost my place. To consent agenda items. Is there a motion on consent agenda items?
So moved.
You're gonna have to unmute yourselves, my colleagues.
A motion.
Moved by Mr. Weiss,
Yep.
second by
Second by McGill.
Ms. McGill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? And motion carries. Moving on to action items. Is Mr. Guerrero on here tonight, Douglas?
Yes.
I believe some of these bond items have to be done roll call. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you guide us to which ones?
I think each of the bond resolutions you're doing should be a separate roll call vote.
So we'll have to do separate motions on them too.
And just
Before I entertain a motion, I had gotten emails from two of my colleagues. Is there any other items on action items that needed to be discussed tonight?
There are some items I would
Yes.
like to discuss.
Yes,
Okay.
just for clarification as well.
Fine, so I'm gonna make a motion for action items D, with the exception of 9, 10, 11.
9, 10, and 11, right? Those are the ones I would suggest in roll call.
We will do separate. Is there a second on the motion?
EY
I'll
Spandau.
second Ashley Lavelle.
Second by EY Spandau. Any discussion?
You wanna go
Yes,
first,
Ashley Lavelle. Oh, yes, thank you, Harry. I just had a quick question about, I know that we did this in the past, but number 3, the BOCES tentative administration budget.
Okay,
My only question, wait, just one moment. It actually isn't. I don't know why I can't see it. Oh, no, I'm lying to you. Number 2, BOCES annual election. I just wanted to know exactly what this was about. Because I noticed that I see everyone else, but us?
who's our BOCES rep? Sabrina, is that you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I wasn't sure. Just a little clarification real quick.
Sabrina, you want to take that question?
So for
I believe we have Nanuet and Pearl River. Their term is up this year. That's the reason why we only see those 2 vacancies. I'm sorry, 3. It's Nanuet, Pearl River, and South Orangetown. There's a vacancy because their term is up this year, which is why we're electing tonight.
Okay, no problem. But that's that is the seat that you hold, right?
Correct.
So you wouldn't be okay. No problem. Thank you.
We're voting on two specific seats tonight.
All right, no
It's
problem.
three seats.
Three. I'm
All
sorry.
right, I just didn't want to make sure that we weren't missing anything. Not missing us, but I get it though. Thank you.
If I could just step in, the terms on the BOCES board are staggered, much as the terms on most school district boards are staggered. So 3 a year.
Okay. All right, thank you, Kathy.
Mr. Gross, were you trying to say something?
Yes, I was just letting Ashley go first. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up. On the property tax report card, we're projecting a reduction in the public school population from last year to this year. I'm not so convinced that that's what we will experience. If that assumption is incorrect, what is our plan?
I don't know if we have the ability, Dr. G, correct me if I'm wrong. These numbers are driven not by our imagination. These are actual real numbers.
Driven, Mr. President, you're correct. They're driven by trend, registrant trend data. I know Ms. Macias can speak to this as well. But to Mr. Grossman's point, obviously having a supplemental plan or an alternative plan makes sense, especially in the event that we do receive an influx of students, let's say from borders opening, et cetera. There are contingencies in place, inclusive of, and Mr. Grossman, again, you're reading my mind this evening, inclusive of really providing our students and families an assurance that we would recruit, hire, and retain additional ESL teachers and those providing supplemental services.
Very good, because I know that the last time when the border opened up, we were a magnet district and a lot of new immigrants came to our district, and it put a stress on hiring as well as educating them, because we didn't have the L teachers present, and we had to move very quickly in order to satisfy the requirements that they needed.
And appreciatively, our Office of Bilingual Education and World Language Lead, Melissa Barrow, and I have been in contact with the New York State Education Department and the Associate Commissioner at the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages at NYSED at the department. And we're working very closely with Ms. Alvarez and her team, including most recently some outreach from Ms. Alvarez this afternoon to partner with them on some potential options that would provide alternative types of services to students. So we're looking at some supplemental partnerships as well.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next one, on the instructional calendar, is it aligned with the non-public school calendar as we've done the last couple of years in order to ensure that every student is able to get 178 days of transportation?
So we used the exact same model that's been used over the past few years. As a matter of fact, Mr. Schwegler and Ms. Skolnick, Ms. DeSimone worked with Jessica Theodore and I on that calendar, and there are a couple of finalizations that need to take place, but to your point and your inquiries through email over the past few days, the level of tightness is as tight as we possibly can make it at this stage, and we don't see any anticipated issues.
So we expect every student to have 178 days of busing continuing forward.
Unless there's some surprise that isn't accounted for, the anticipation is in alignment, correct, to be in alignment.
Does this need to be approved at this meeting, or could we ensure that the alignment is aligned for the next meeting?
So it actually was to be approved at the last meeting and got pulled because of a couple of questions. Really, we can always, Mr. Grossman, to your point, in hopes of bringing a level of comfort, we can always amend the calendar if we need to do so, but really approving it this evening is prudent.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're still on the instructional calendar. I did compare it to a few of the other districts. I noticed the February break, we only have 2 days compared to the other districts that has the whole week off. Can you just explain why we only have just the 2 days based, I guess, on how the calendar was arranged?
Yes, what the district sought to do this year, and apparently years in the past, was really begin to increasingly align with other Rockland County districts. Because of the way the one of the collective bargaining agreements is written, the district is unable to garner the necessary number of days for student instructional time and obviously then teacher direct instruction time. The district did offer the teaching unit some flexibility in getting in a little earlier this year. They declined that offer, so the district was compelled to maintain this calendar.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, the various notes. I didn't see them on the budget lines in 17 in the attached budget. I see the codes, but I didn't see the notes there. And presumably we're going to budget them to pay them back.
The expectation is that they would be budgeted to pay back. That's correct.
Okay. I kind of assume so given the presentation, but I think that it might just be off a little there. Have anything else? I had one last thing, and I apologize on this one. On the amendment to the employment agreement, I know that Dr. Wortham had requested to cash out more than 10 days that she hadn't used as well prior to her departure. And we did not amend her contract. And she was only able to cash out the 10 days for that. I think me personally, I feel like we need to be consistent.
Mr. Grossman,
Yes.
if I may, I've actually had conversation with Dr. Giammartino about this, and I've supported it, and I'd like to say my piece on this. Unlike in the past, the board has not been in favor of supporting such a move. When a superintendent, a permanent superintendent or administrator that's here from year to year, the board felt that there's enough structure and time to plan your days off and use them accordingly. And we were not in favor of that being carried over or cashed out. Unlike many places that has been board policy. In this specific case, with an interim superintendent and with the year that we've had, I personally do support deviation from that trend and us supporting. I don't think an interim superintendent started at the beginning of the year is not up in the running for the new superintendentship should be forced to take days off. We need every minute we can get out of him at this point. And every day he's willing to stay and not use one of these days. There's another day the district needs so badly. So I would urge the board to make the exception and support this amendment.
Vice Menzel, this is Sherry. Miguel, can I say something for a second?
Sure.
Dr. Giamartino, if possible, and I know that we're going to be voting on items 9, 10, and 11 individually. Can you, can you at least give, which I understand it, but for those that are listening to our community members, maybe you can give a brief synopsis on each note, like why.
Sherry, Ms. McGill, can we hold your question until we get through this motion?
Sure. Only reason why I asked Vice Mandel is because I was about to say the same thing, but I saw people going to other items on the agenda, like the calendar, which was, later on as well. So that's why.
Well, actually, Ms. McGill, calendar's on item 16.
Right.
That's part of this motion. This motion was 1 through 16 with the exception of 7, 8, and 9.
All right, so
I'm sorry,
okay.
9, 10, with the exception of 9, 10, and 11.
Okay, so then on that note, so it's going up to 16, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You had anything else?
I have a question with number 15 then.
There you go.
The Health and Welfare Services Agreement. Quick question. Why, and I was noticing this, I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but why did the council, it seems like when I looked at the agreement, I see that normally, you have 3 signatures, and I saw Dr. Giamartino sign, but then it says as per BOE Council. So why did the council craft this agreement? Wouldn't that generally come from like special education? Because I was reading the agreement. So if anybody can answer that.
Now, these agreements are fairly commonly written by the attorneys for the respective school districts. These are typical agreements that we have between districts when we're providing services one to the other, or students of our district are attending that Monticello or vice versa, and health services are provided, and the sending school district is responsible for the costs associated with that. So we always have issues with the language to make sure that the nature of the services are properly written and the amounts that are being paid are agreed to. So we are always involved in writing these agreements.
Okay. And another question in terms of the amount, I'm glad you mentioned that. If you look at the agreement, I remember before having this conversation about students that reside in our district, but perhaps, attend a different school. And there was always an agreement where they at least gave the amount per pupil or per student, which when I looked, I see that they gave a calculation, but it doesn't really give you some type of amount. And this agreement started in July of last year, 2020, and is going to end June 2021. So I was a little confused as to why, as compared.
I think you're confusing the cost of the housing the student versus health and welfare, which is.
No, remember it was before Wiseman. Don't mean to cut you off, but it was before. I remember we talked about it, and it had to do with eye screening, health screening. Same thing, same idea. So that's why I was curious as to why there wasn't an amount.
I thought it was service driven.
Yeah, no, it was.
It is service driven, Ms. McGill. To answer your question, as you'll see, particularly in paragraph C2, there's reference to 2 different commissioners' decisions in there, and those are decisions which were a result of a dispute between East Ramapo and Monticello with respect to the students that were attending and what was being paid for. As a result of those disputes, this agreement came out. It took longer than it should have. This should have been in place earlier in the year, but it wasn't. We finally got the amounts resolved. The calculation is pursuant to a commissioner's decision that sets forth specifically how this amount will be calculated based on the services provided and the number of students that are attending. So while these agreements are fairly standard when it comes to the amounts that are being paid by District A to District B, or vice versa, depending on who's the sending district, this is of a peculiar type simply because there were some disputes over the past years between Monticello and East Ramapo. I can tell you that those disputes have been resolved and this contract is a result of that. And I suspect this will be the fairly standard form that we'll be using moving forward.
I'm sorry, not to cut you guys off, Doug. I was actually just about to ask. I wasn't too sure, but was this the same situation? Like, was this the same district?
Ashley, is that you?
Yes, it's me. I'm sorry, Ashley Lavelle. Was this the same situation that we had before? So are you saying that, like, kind of, in other words, our hands are basically tied with this? Like, this is basically what this is the agreement that we have to come.
We're required by law to make these payments, and then
It is whatever they charge.
in this particular case, it was just a matter of a question of the number of students that were attending in the different.
Mr. Lavelle's question. There's no price chart. It's basically based on their actual cost, right?
It's the actual cost. That's right.
Okay. Is there any way that we can get the cost by any chance? I don't believe I see it on here.
That would probably be in the original contract, no?
Yeah, well, or the finance office will have to work that out based on the number of students and the actual cost. I don't offhand know what that is.
Is there a price sheet?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's in the contract. I mean, in the agreement, it's not there.
If I may respond on behalf of the finance office.
Thanks, Linda.
So typically what we see is the respective school districts will submit an invoice, very clearly reflecting what the cost of the health and welfare services are to that particular student. It's itemized in accordance to budget code. It identifies what they're paying for particular services, being nursing services. It includes salaries, benefits, and so forth, in accordance to the agreement that Mr. Gerhardt outlined, section, I believe it was C2.
Yes.
And the finance office verifies that data to make sure that the calculation is correct. And we even look at residency to ensure that we are fiscally responsible for those particular students. And once we go through that verification process, then we approve the invoice for payment and allow it to go through the process. But that, of course, cannot happen unless we have a board approved contract with that respective district, which is why it's up for board approval this evening.
I may remind the board members we brought this up in the past meetings. Sherry, you're new here, but we charge back other districts as well. Just as like we're getting charged for their children, our children there, we do the same thing.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, it's been a while. Who made the motion?
So the motion is to approve action items 1 to 8 and
16.
and 12 to 17.
Right. Okay.
17 being the budget.
Who made the
I'm
motion?
sorry, say that one more time, Ms. Kivy. You're saying
1 through 17 with the exception of 9, 10, and 11. Kathy, who made the motion? I'm sorry.
I wrote down that you made the motion, seconded by Mr. E. Weissmandel.
Oh, I thought that was the previous one. All right. Yes, okay, I see it now. I did jot it down.
It's so much discussion, you know.
Right. So my notes got a little skewed. So a motion made by Yehuda Weissmandel, second by E. Weissmandel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Motion carries. Moving on to items 9, 10, and 11. We'll make these motions individually. But Ms. Linda, if you could please take 2 minutes and just walk the board.
One second, Yehuda. I was muted. I'm voting no on 3 and no on 5.
3 and 5. Okay. Kathy, you got that?
Noted. Yep.
Kathy, and you have me, correct?
Yes, Ms. Charles Pierre is also voting nay on number 5.
Does the motion still carry?
The motion still carries.
Thank you. Linda, can you please just give the board a brief?
Kathy, did you register my aye?
Yes.
Got your aye.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right.
At this time, I'd like to invite members of our borrowing team to walk us through the borrowing instruments. Tonight with us, we have Mr. Bill Jackson and two other members of his team. I believe Mr. Birmingham, and I cannot see him now here. I believe just those two. So Bill, if you could.
Sure, I'm here with my partner, Dan Birmingham. Dan and I put together several resolutions for the board, and those are to address the immediate cash flow needs of the district. There'll be 3 specific borrowings that the district would undertake: a revenue anticipation note borrowing, which would be authorized by a revenue anticipation note resolution that you have before you tonight. There's also a deficiency note resolution and a budget note resolution. I will leave the resolutions to Mr. Birmingham to discuss in a moment. The revenue anticipation note resolution that you have before you authorizes the president of the Board of Education to issue revenue anticipation notes, which are, again, short-term debt instruments in anticipation of the district's receipt of state aid. And this will address a mismatch between expenditures the district has and the receipt of state aid, which sometimes does come in during the first several months of the following fiscal year. So in this case, we'd be talking about revenues that are due and payable to the school district during the current fiscal year. However, due to timing issues, those revenues are not always paid during the current fiscal year, but are expected to be paid by September or October based upon your past practices. As I mentioned, the other 2 resolutions that you have before you are a deficiency note resolution and a budget note resolutions. And with that, I'll turn it over to my partner, Dan Birmingham.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. As Bill had mentioned, you've got 2 other resolutions before the board tonight. The second of the 3 is a deficiency note resolution, and that is to address a decrease in state aid revenues that the district did not receive in this fiscal year due to the district's state aid being reduced by a certain amount. You had that budgeted last year, during the budget time last year, and the state, as you know, required some of the state aid or the CARES Act aid to be directed to non-public schools, and that caused a mismatch in your revenue projections. So that is with respect to the deficiency note resolution. And with respect to the budget note resolution, that's almost like a composite or an opposite type of resolution from a deficiency note resolution, in the sense that the budget note resolution will provide temporary financing to make up for any expenditures for which there was additional or unplanned transportation costs in the district to the extent of $8.8 million. So on top of the resolution that my colleague Bill talked about, the budget note resolution, these 2 other resolutions are set forth as items 10 and 11.
Ms. McGill,
Yes.
does that answer your question?
Thank you, Wes Mendel, but I just wanted the public to hear, because I
Oh,
understand.
absolutely.
Yeah. As long as just to give the public an idea of what these notes, what they are.
That's very important. I do appreciate you being on top of that.
But I'm good. Thank you.
Fine. Well, I'd like to entertain a motion for item 9, revenue anticipation note.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Grossman. Is there a second?
Second, Mark.
Second by Mr. Berkowitz. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Berkowitz?
Yes.
Mark?
Mr. Berkowitz?
Said yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Ms. Charles Pierre?
Aye.
Mr. Grossman?
Aye.
Ms. Lavelle?
Yes.
Ms. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel? Must have lost him. Mr. Y. Weissmandel?
Aye. And the motion carries.
Carries with 8.
I will entertain a motion for item number 10, deficiency note. Is there a motion?
Moved, Shimon Rose.
Moved by Mr. Rose, second by
I'll second Ashley LaBelle.
Ms. Lavelle. Is there any discussion on the item? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Berkowitz? Mr. Berkowitz?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mark, there seems to be a delay with your mic.
Ms. Charles Pierre?
Aye.
Mr. Grossman?
Aye.
Ms. Lavelle?
Yes.
Ms. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye. Aye.
Mr. E. Weissmandel is not back. Mr. Y.
should be back.
Weissmandel.
I see him, he's on there, he might have stepped away. Is Effie, you there? And my vote is aye.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Mr. E. Weissmandel, how do you vote? On the number 10? The
Give me a
deficiency
second,
note.
please.
Mr. Weissman, were you here for the motion?
Hello? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Can we hear you now?
How do you vote?
Yeah, I
for-
vote yes.
Okay, thank you. So the motion carries with 9.
I vote yes.
And item number 11. Is there a motion for item 11 budget note?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Grossman, second by
A second on the motion.
Mr. Weiss. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Mr.
Clerk,
Berkowitz?
please call the roll.
Yes.
Ms. Charles Pierre?
Aye.
Mr. Grossman?
Aye.
Ms. Lavelle?
Yes.
Ms. McGill?
Yes.
Mr. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. E. Weissmandel?
Yes.
Mr. Y. Weissmandel?
Aye,
Motion carries with 9.
motion carries. Thank you. Future meeting dates, Kathy?
The next meeting is April 27 for a regular meeting at 7:30 p.m. The governor has extended the online meetings, so it will be an online meeting again, and the information will be available on the website by April 27.
Until further notice. I will now make a motion to adjourn to executive session. We will be discussing the hiring of an individual. Is there anything else, Kathy?
Yep, just give me one moment. And actually, no, just that one item, sir.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Ms. Charles Pierre. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstain? Motion carries. We will be out in executive session. I do anticipate a resolution when we come out of executive session. Actually, a very exciting resolution, and I urge everyone that's able to wait around and try not to be too long to be here when we get back. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Ellis.
Hey, Kathy, I stepped off the meeting.
That's fine, and I'll text you when we're coming back, okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
I don't see the invite.
I sent it just when Yehuda was speaking. It should be in your inbox.
There it is. Okay. Just came up.
Okay.
We're ready to go live?
Yep, in 3 seconds. Yep, we're live now.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We have one motion coming out of executive session. Kathy, will you please read the motion?
Yes. Whereas the board engaged a thorough process to recruit and hire a new superintendent of schools commencing work July 1, 2021. And whereas the board engaged the services of a search consultant firm to assist with that process. And whereas the board followed the advice of the search consultant, interviewed multiple candidates, and determined the best qualified candidate for the position was Dr. Clarence G. Ellis. And whereas the board and Dr. Ellis have engaged in good faith negotiations for terms of an employment agreement for Dr. Ellis to serve as superintendent of schools role. Now, therefore, based upon the foregoing, the board hereby 1, appoints Dr. Clarence G. Ellis, superintendent of schools of the East Ramapo Central School District for a period commencing July 1, 2021, consistent with the terms of an employment agreement negotiated between the board and Dr. Ellis and accompanying this resolution. And 2, approves entering into the accompanying employment agreement between the board and Dr. Ellis and authorizes the board president to execute same. 3, authorizes any and all such action necessary to carry out the intent of this resolution.
I will move. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Motion carries.
Oh, my God.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Ellis, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of myself and the board to welcome you to our district. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us tonight. Your reputation precedes you, and we are looking forward to your leadership and you taking this district to great heights. I'd like to give you the opportunity to say a few words to the board and to the public, and I'm looking forward to meeting you again in person.
Thank you. Well, thank you, President Weissman and the entire East Ramapo Central School District Board. I'm moved, I'm touched, I'm grateful, and I'm humbled. I will tell you that I'm committed to helping, all the students of East Ramapo Central School District to have a better and improved learning experience and ultimately improve student outcomes, because I believe that, especially looking at the way the board conducted business tonight, that you guys, I must say, are, very, very cohesive. And it was like a finely tuned machine. I was very, very impressed. And so, I hope I could just augment that and supplement it and support this district moving forward. So I've had a career full of a service to children, 35 years, and I've been blessed to do so. So I think there's nothing more, amazing than serving children. That's that's our most precious commodity. Every family says the most important thing in their life are their children. So the fact that the school board and the community of East Ramapo Central School District, would turn the leadership of this district over to me to support their children is I'm totally humbled by that, and I greatly appreciate that. Thank you for this opportunity.
And thank you, Dr. Ellis. Welcome aboard, and we're looking forward to many short meetings together.
Thanks again.
With that, I will now make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Anyone will second?
McGill. Oh, second by McGill.
Second by Ms. McGill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone oppose or abstain? Can stay. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Congratulations. Good night.
Congratulations,
Dr. Ellis.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congrats, Dr. Ellis.
Thanks to all for your support.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
First, check your email.
I will.
Dr. Ellis, congratulations. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kiwi. Take care. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you. Good. You too. Good night.
Good night.